It's my sincere honor to introduce our first keynote speaker, California State Treasurer John Chiang. Treasurer Chiang was elected in 2014 as California's 33rd state treasurer. As the state's banker, he oversees trillions of dollars in transactions every year, selling California's bonds, investing the state's money, and managing its cash. In addition, he oversees the financing authorities that help improve our state, including those that work to improve the environment. He also sits on the governing boards of the nation's two largest public pension funds, California Public Employees Retirement System and California State Teachers Retirement System. Prior to being elected state treasurer, John served as state controller, where he successfully managed the state's credit rating during the Great Recession, ensured the fiscal solvency of the state's pension plans, and was a leader in pension and corporate government reform. Those are no small tasks. Treasurer Chiang was first elected to the Board of Equalization in 1998, where he served 2 terms, including 3 years as chair. He began his career as a tax law specialist with the IRS, can I talk to you later? And as an attorney in the state controller's office. Throughout his career, John has made transparency a priority, believing that sharing information with taxpayers enables them to hold government officials accountable. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Treasurer John Chiang.
Well, good morning. I am absolutely delighted to be with all of you. I wanted to begin my comments by just thanking Linda for her pioneering leadership and incredible vision and all the good deeds you've done for the people of the state of California. For those of you who are not familiar with Linda's background, she was the lead negotiator for Governor Schwarzenegger on AB 32, a leader on the Green Chemistry Registry, and a real champion for environmental justice. We have this incredible disparity that's growing in California and the United States of America between those who have and those who have not. And it's not an attack about those who have, but if we're gonna build communities of opportunity, if we're gonna build communities of wellness and health, you have to make sure that America, lifts all boats. And so Linda, you've been terrific in making sure that those of us all benefit for the common good. So thank you very much. And then to the climate, to all those additionally involved, I wanted to thank you for this incredible opportunity. As Linda introduced, I'm the state treasurer of California. I am the state's banker, so I have this incredible portfolio. What I've been asked to speak about is to pinpoint the work that we're doing today in the treasurer's office regarding green bonds. But I'm going to share a little bit more about the breadth of our portfolio and all the things that we're working on in the treasurer's office, because this is an incredible conference. Not only do we want to share what we're doing in California, we want to hear what we're doing, because we understand the incredible impact, all the good change that can benefit if all of us working together in concert, collectively, decide to make this world a healthier, better place for all its residents. And so, as the state's treasurer, I'm the state's banker, as I mentioned. I am responsible for trillions of dollars of transactions each year for the benefit of Californians. I handle the short-term investment portfolio, so on a given day in California, we invest $65 to $70 billion of state and local government dollars. I'm the agent of sale of the state's debt. Now, we don't handle all of the transactions for selling a debt, but we're taking a larger portfolio and making sure that we have better bond practices in the state of California. It's been an incredible charge that we've been leading over the first year and a quarter that I've been the state's banker. And then I chair 14 economic development authorities. So from housing to EV charging stations up to clean companies like Tesla. We work on trying to grow those companies in California, try to share the knowledge and expertise throughout the United States and through the world so that we change things. Instead of 80 million cars being sold each year in the world and only half of 1% being electrical cars, we want to grow that so that we can have better transportation, cleaner environments, greater economic opportunities for all. And then, as mentioned by Linda, I sit on CalPERS and CalSTRS, which is this country's 2 largest defined benefit plans. CalPERS with an investment portfolio of about $287 billion. CalSTRS, which is the state teachers retirement system, with an investment portfolio of over $180 billion. So let me share a little bit about the work that we're doing. I mentioned at first the short-term investment portfolio. So we are actively engaged in green bonds in the state of California. So we purchase, we get to be both the buyer and the seller. So we buy green bonds because we want to stimulate the market. Now, relative to the rest of the world, the United States of America is about 15 years behind what's transpiring in Europe. They have a different level of thinking. They're engaged in better thinking, frankly, and unfortunately, than what we're doing today in the United States of America. We're trying to catch up. But we want California and others, partners, to make sure that we close that gap rapidly. And the good news is that you see China, Latin America, and others also engaged in those types of practices because we want to share the best thinking. More importantly, we want powerful movers and actors to do the right thing so that we change this world. So we purchase those bonds, oftentimes the World Bank's green bonds. One of the things that I've led is that I've tried to lead for better governance. And so not only the governance of CalPERS and CalSTRS, we try to integrate ESG throughout our thinking in the Treasurer's office. We want better governance practices. We want better human rights practices. We want to be sensitive to climate change. And so just a few miles from here, we're sensitive to the ocean. I hope they are not even a mile, just a few hundred feet. I hope you guys take a walk along the beautiful beaches of San Diego. So in the next, by 2100, we expect these sea level rise to increase from 3 to 5 feet off this coast. If you think about the implications, if you do that growth of 1.4 meters off the coast of California, right, it's going to have an impact into the coast of California of about 40 plus miles, right? There's going to be extraordinary devastation. So one of the things I did is I pressed aggressively on the legislative front to make sure that our local jurisdiction take account of what that impact of sea level rise is. Because we don't want, unfortunately, what happened to Japan with Fukushima and the devastation that happened to the good people in the communities because of those impacts. We don't want a Hurricane Katrina type of incident off the coast of California. And we want to know what we have to do because we're starting to see tremendous impacts on where the lands are and the communities that don't have the financial wherewithal to plan, to prepare as the world progresses and the climate change has those impacts in this community. We ought to learn from Bangladesh, which is the canary in the coal mine, of what typhoons and hurricanes do to the disintegration of communities along the coast, especially the impoverished communities. So we ought to take those lessons to heart and respond, and that's why we responded when in my prior office, I was the state controller. We wanted the state to take account for all the public trust lands along this incredible coast and the home of California. In addition, we wanted to make sure that we aggressively implement the financing tools that are available. So we know that there's tremendous use of energy, it creates tremendous costs to the environment, financial costs, and here we have a lot of big urban areas of issues in regards to income inequality, but urban areas that have huge environmental consequences. So some of the actions are we went also on the legislative front to try to propose what we call better. Now we've moved it differently because of the financial issues that Linda alluded to. In 2008, 2009, California was in financial crisis. Some of you heard I had to issue IOUs to preserve California's financial health, to make sure that this state didn't go insolvent. Unfortunately, we witnessed what happened when you have jurisdictions like Greece or Puerto Rico fall into those issues. California, on the other hand, has improved its financial position such that we have one of the most remarkable economic recoveries on the face of this earth, which also gives us the opportunities to implement new financing tools to address some of society's larger and greater issues that we're tackling today in the Treasurer's office, in the Controller's office, in the Governor's office, and in the legislative branch. It's incredibly exciting what's happening on that particular front. But we pushed to make sure that we try to think about how we refinance energy efficiency of commercial buildings. Now, we didn't get it through, even though it was an incredibly popular idea in the private sector and the government sector, because of the state's financial issues. And so we're working with the governor's office. We have support from the governor's office. We have some support from the legislative branch. We're just trying to make sure that we can create an opportunity to finance energy efficiency programs so that we can tackle the commercial B buildings in the state of California, creating those new types of opportunities. And then within the Treasurer's Office, as I mentioned, I chair a whole bunch of economic development authorities. And so one of the big efforts that we've been pushing is the sales tax exclusion for alternative energy and advanced transportation programs. Now that program was going to expire last year, and so my office aggressively advocated for the continuation. And so in California, the program provides for a $100 million sales tax exclusion on an annual basis. Now, during the recession, oftentimes companies, because they were in poor financial condition, couldn't take full advantage of those opportunities. The great news is in my first year in office last year, working in partnership with other organizations, working with companies, going through their balance sheet, looking at their financial statements, seeing what type of benefit it would provide to them, we were fully subscribed. Now, we would have thought, what a terrible lost opportunity if we didn't continue this program. But as I mentioned, we've increased the state's financial health. We were able to effectively lobby the governor's office with the support of the governor's staff, and so we're continuing that program for a few more years. What's even more exciting is that we're trying to expand that program. So instead of $100 million a year, we're trying to expand it to $350 million a year. And we also have this vision that we want to expand what that sales tax exclusion also applies to, such as water technologies. Because we know one of the huge impacts and one of the huge costs is water transport, water generation, and the economic consequences of the water's drought. And so we're trying to make sure that we can perhaps expand that portfolio to address multiple issues for the residents of the state of California and ultimately for our global humanity. And then as what Climate Action Reserve wanted me to discuss, green bonds. So we're aggressively pushing forward green bonds, especially in the municipal space. Europe has a very well-developed market for green bonds, as I mentioned, but fundamentally, their green bond market is different than ours, and the American municipal market is unique, is because it has a tax-exempt status. So we understand there are tax implications that are principal for many of the wealthiest investors in the United States of America. We also know that because of the concentration of economics and wealth and generation, that there are different parts, there are different sentiments that are harbored by industry and residents in regards to fossil fuels versus clean energy relative to what happens in the rest of the world. And so this is an effort that I've been engaged in for 10 years in this space, and then green bonds over the last year and a quarter as the state's treasurer. And so just to give you a sense of how we came to this, 10 years ago, I went to the Exxon shareholder meeting. I was challenging ExxonMobil shareholders' practices in regards to climate disclosure. And so going to CalPERS and CalSTRS, I said we needed greater transparency, accountability, especially in our portfolio. So I said, why don't we try to get some of our fund managers to survey some of the funds that they're invested with to see what their GHG exposure and emissions are. And then as we progressed forward into the Treasurer's Office, I mentioned this green bond effort. So recently, my office has done a national tour. We started off in Los Angeles, we went to Sacramento, we went to San Francisco. A couple of months ago, we went to New York, followed by Boston. And what we did is we sat down in meetings with about 50 socially responsible investors, institutional investors, broker-dealers, and underwriters to see what we need to do to make sure that we mature the green bond market. Now, we know that there have been green bond issuances in the municipal space, but there's been some questions about some of those issuances, really focused about what is green. They were talking about some of the prior green bond issuances having projects within those issuances that people would question as to whether it's green. There were fundamental questions about why would you expand the green bond market? You already have a brown market. Some of those actually would be green, and so would there be an investor advantage? Would there be a price advantage if you created a green bond market? Now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to be at the front end of transformational generational change. As I mentioned, the older generation is less sensitive to investing in green and clean projects. If you survey the millennials, right, their propensity to be sensitive to climate change is twice what my generation, the baby boom generation, is. And we well understand that as successive generations get older, there's going to be a massive transformation, the shifting of wealth. Estimates are between 30 to 40 trillion dollars of wealth passing from the generation prior to me, to my generation, the baby boom generation, to the millennial generation. So what we want to do is we want to create the financial instruments. We want to create the financial markets so that the younger generations can seize upon this opportunity to invest in things that fit with them emotionally, socially, spiritually, and financially. And that's where we think we capture the opportunity in the markets of the future, right? You increase the investor base so it's wider and it's deeper, especially in challenged times. Right? We don't want to have to always, in the state of California, and I'm sure that there's other treasurers throughout the state of California, to go to the 10 to 40 top institutional investors and be subject to how they want to define what the markets want to look like. We want to create a new and powerful market, people who are more expansive, people who want to create double bottom line, triple bottom line, create opportunities that fit the imagination. So we're very, very excited about that. Part of the challenges, as they asked me to address, were what does that need to look like? And so we're trying to tackle what type of certification or disclosure is required. You'll get debates. Some will say that you need some type of certification, especially at the front end. Some will say you only need disclosure. But what they say what's really important is that California, because we're the biggest state, we're the biggest borrower, I stopped before I said the amount over the last 30 years in aggregate between state and local entities in California, we've borrowed $1.5 trillion. $1.5 trillion, right? We make markets, we move markets, and so if we can create the instrumentalities in regards to green bonds, if the big brother on the block acts, if we do it properly, it's going to make it so much easier for all the others to participate. There'll be standardization. And you're already seeing technology platforms on Wall Street making those appropriate adjustments. So we're engaged very actively in those conversations as to what needs to occur. And so we're having those conversations so that you have a sense of how it grows and expands. And this is where CIR is really important because we need those disclosure standards, the certification, the deep thinking. So we really applaud your efforts in this particular regard and want to make sure that you contribute to the best thinking and how we ought to think through all of this. And so over the next few months, my staff is aggregating all the comments and information, and we're going to disseminate a white paper. We hope you'll participate because it's only going to work if we get your best thinking, and so that we can become aggregate actors to make sure that we put together the best standards in place. And then we hope some of you will gather with us, if all of you will gather us. We're going to try to put together a conference next year to have a full disclosure, a full interaction, a meaningful dialogue as to what this market needs to look like. And then we're going to press forward after that to start to make this market real and powerful. And so we want to move it on the tax-exempt municipal side, but we're also not going to exclude taxables because when you have institutional investors, they don't get the benefit of the tax-exempt debt. And so they want to make sure that there's products and programs available to them. And frankly, sitting on authorities that have close to $500 billion plus, I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to capture those returns, those opportunities to meet their changing standards for their portfolios. And then last, let me end with an effort that I've just started over the last few months. So I've been trying to change America's private sector leadership in regards to its thinking. I mentioned ExxonMobil. So 10 years ago when I got on the CalPERS CalSTRS board, I sent a letter to CalPERS and CalSTRS, and we used to have these focus lists which would target underperforming companies. And I said, we need better thinkers on these boards who would be more open to new ideas, to new opportunities. And so I said, why don't we look at having those boards look at women, people of different technologies, skill sets, other types of technical skill sets, people from emerging communities, because today the world's global. You know, a few years ago, or not, it's more than a few years ago, 3 decades ago, you had a major cosmetics company in the United States whose entire board was made up of men, right? So you're asking them, what do they know about lipstick? What do they know about other types of things, right? It's just being smart about the leadership and the people who understand their products. So we pushed that forward. Last year, I said we need to be more sensitive to other types of opportunities, and I pressed upon CalPERS and CalSTRS to look at members of the LGBT community. Earlier this year, when I was meeting with the permanent ambassador to the United Nations from France and a Canadian representative, I was listening to an idea, and I said, why don't we expand this idea? And I talked to my colleague, my successor, Betty Yee, and I say, hey, Betty, why don't we ask CalPERS and CalSTRS to try to integrate leaders that have climate change expertise onto corporate boards? So that's been accepted by my colleagues. And so I leave you last with that. We want to change not only where I am, public sector leadership, not only do we want to change NGOs, we want to get for-profit major corporations and others to be involved. So as we expand these programs, I hope you're excited about this incredibly wide and deep and powerful opportunity that all of us have. Then on that last effort, I especially ask, if you're interested on those corporate boards, please contact CalPERS, CalSTRS, submit your names for review, and so as we engage with these companies, we can add the list of individuals who can make that type of change. But as you gather here, again, I just want to celebrate all of your work. I want to thank you deeply for the profound change that you're implementing in our communities, and I look forward to working with you in the Treasurer's Office, and I encourage all of you to continue to work with Linda and her colleagues on the board. Together, we're going to make tomorrow something we can be incredibly proud of. Thank you very much.